For 2,000 years, one particular ministry has been studied, debated, and honestly emulated all over the world. But what was the actual blueprint? Today, we're going to break down the three core activities that really defined the public ministry of Jesus, and it's all laid out in a single powerful verse. Okay, so at its core, the ministry really boiled down to three distinct but totally interconnected actions. Let's take a quick look at each one.
First up, you have teaching. This was the foundation, right? The systematic instruction, the nuts and bolts, all designed to build understanding and share knowledge.
Then you have preaching. And this was something different. It wasn't just about dumping information. This was a proclamation, a passionate call to do something with what you just learned. And finally, there was healing. This was the proof in the pudding, a tangible demonstration of authority that went way beyond words to show compassion and, well, to provide some serious evidence. And there it is. That's the verse from Matthew chapter 4. Teaching, preaching, and healing. Now, it is so easy to just lump all these together, especially teaching and preaching. I mean, we use those words interchangeably all the time. But the source material we're looking at argues they are fundamentally different, with totally distinct goals. And understanding the difference between these three pillars, well, that's the key to unlocking the whole strategy behind the ministry. It wasn't just a random collection of things to do. It was a really cohesive system where every single part played a crucial role. So, let's tackle that main question head on. What really is the difference between teaching and preaching? Well, it turns out the original Greek language gives us a massive clue. When the Bible talks about teaching, the Greek word is didasko, and you can probably hear our English word didactic in there. It literally means systematic instruction. So the goal of teaching, according to the source, is all about knowledge transfer, moving a person from ignorance to actually understanding God's word. It's about building that solid foundation. But preaching, on the other hand, comes from a totally different Greek word, kerusso. This means to proclaim or to declare, kind of like a town crier announcing a king's message. Its goal isn't really to instruct, but to exhort, to encourage, to strengthen commitment, and to stir your heart and will to act on what you already know. And this analogy just illustrates it perfectly. Teaching is like popping the hood of a car and showing your son, step by step, here's the engine, here's the dipstick, this is how you check the fluids. It's the how-to. Preaching is that urgent reminder right before he leaves for a road trip. Hey, be sure you check the oil. One is instruction, the other is exhortation. And the source argues you absolutely need both. I mean, without the instruction, the exhortation is pointless, right? You're just telling someone to do something they have no idea how to do. Okay, so we've got instruction and we've got exhortation. But where does that third pillar, healing, fit into the system? Well, it turns out it wasn't just about making people feel better. It had this profound strategic purpose that tied everything else together.
So, yeah, why was healing so front and center? Why not just focus on the message? The source actually gives us two different layers to the answer here. Okay, so the first layer is the one we all get instinctively, just pure compassion. The texts are full of descriptions of Jesus seeing the crowds, feeling compassion for them, and healing their sick. It was a direct, heartfelt response to real, tangible human pain. But that is not the whole story. The source points out a second, and you could argue even more strategic purpose for all these miracles that went way beyond just compassion. And this is the key. Jesus actually says it himself in the book of John. When people challenge his identity, he doesn't just get into a debate. He points to his actions and says, the miracles, they speak for me. They were his credentials.
So here's the crucial point. The healings basically worked as a body of evidence. Think about it. At a time with a lot of traveling teachers, these miracles made Jesus stand out. They fulfilled very specific prophecies about what the Messiah was supposed to do. Make the lame walk, the blind see. They served as verifiable public proof that his teaching wasn't just his opinion. It came with divine authority. It's almost like he was presenting evidence in a courtroom, urging people to look at the facts and reach a verdict about who he really was.
Now, understanding healing in this way, as both compassion and evidence, naturally leads us to one of the biggest, most sensitive debates in the modern church. And this is where the historical analysis suddenly gets very, very personal for a lot of people. The question just hangs in the air. If this was his ministry back then, should we be expecting the exact same kind of miraculous healing today, on demand?
This is a deeply emotional issue, and the source dives right into the scriptural arguments.
One of the most common verses people point to as a guarantee of physical healing comes from Isaiah. By his wounds we are healed. But the source makes a powerful case that context is everything. If you look at the verses right around that quote, they're all talking about transgressions and iniquities. Those are spiritual problems. The result of this healing is peace with God. So the source concludes that the healing being talked about here is spiritual salvation from sin, not a blanket promise to cure every physical disease.
And that interpretation completely reframes the whole conversation. It shifts the focus away from asking how much faith a person has and points it toward a different, much more complex theological idea.
So if healing isn't guaranteed, what's going on when people pray and nothing happens? A really common explanation is to blame it on a lack of faith or some hidden sin. The source we're looking at flatly rejects that idea. Instead, it argues that it's a matter of God's sovereignty. The idea is that God isn't some cosmic vending machine where you put in the right amount of faith and get a guaranteed result. Sometimes, for reasons we just can't understand, the answer is no.
And this leads to a really startling, almost shocking conclusion from the source's author. He actually says he's kind of glad he can't have a guarantee of perfect physical health, because the reality of sickness and death forces him to focus on what he believes is truly ultimate, not comfort here on earth, but a heavenly future. It's a radical reframing of suffering, not as a failure, but as a tool for focus.
And all of this leaves us with a much bigger question, doesn't it? This whole breakdown hinges on context, on language, on interpretation. It forces us to ask, how do we take a 2,000-year-old blueprint and figure out what it means for us today? How do we balance that ancient historical context with our modern hopes and expectations? And that is the challenge that lies right at the heart of faith.